The day Earth's skies lit up with the arrival of the Valarian ships was one Dr. Lydia Chen would never forget. As lead xenobiologist at the Global Space Agency, GSA, she had dreamed of this moment her entire life. Now, standing on the tarmac of the GSA's primary launch facility, she watched with bated breath as the sleek, silver craft descended from the clouds. "They're really here," whispered Commander Jack Harper, the head of Earth's first contact team. His usually stoic face betrayed a mix of excitement and apprehension. Lydia nodded, her heart racing. "Let's hope all our preparations weren't in vain." As the ship touched down, a hush fell over the assembled crowd of scientists, military personnel, and government officials. With a soft hiss, a door slid open in the craft's smooth exterior. A ramp extended, and 3 figures emerged. The Valarians were breathtaking. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies were lithe and graceful, covered in iridescent scales that shimmered in the sunlight. Their faces were strikingly human-like, save for their large, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to hold the depths of the cosmos within them. The lead Valarian stepped forward, raising a 4-fingered hand in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. "Greetings, people of Earth," it spoke, its voice melodious and gender-neutral. "I am Ambassador Zara of Valara. We come in peace and friendship." Lydia and Jack exchanged glances before stepping forward. Jack cleared his throat. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Zara. I'm Commander Jack Harper, and this is Dr. Lydia Chen. We're honored to receive you on behalf of humanity." As formalities were exchanged and the Valarians were escorted to their temporary quarters, Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something monumental. Little did she know how right she was. Over the next few weeks, Lydia worked closely with the Valarian science team, exchanging knowledge about their respective species and planets. She found herself particularly drawn to Kale, a young Valarian scientist whose curiosity matched her own. One evening, as they pored over genetic data in the lab, Kale tilted their head in a gesture Lydia had come to recognize as confusion. "Dr. Chen, I'm puzzled by something in your species' reproductive data." Lydia looked up from her holographic display. "What is it, Kale?" "According to this, human males are constantly fertile, without a specific mating season." Kale's voice was a mix of disbelief and fascination. Lydia blinked, surprised by the question. "Well, yes, that's normal for our species. Why? Is it different for Valarians?" Kale's scales rippled in what Lydia had learned was their equivalent of a blush. "Very different. On Valara, we have a strict mating season once every 5 years. The idea of constant fertility is shocking, to say the least." As Lydia explained the intricacies of human reproduction, she couldn't help but notice the growing look of alarm on Kale's face. It was clear that this biological difference was more significant than either of them had initially realized. But how do you control your population?" Kale asked, their voice tinged with concern. "How do you manage resources? The energy expenditure alone must be enormous." Lydia chuckled, finding Kale's reaction both amusing and endearing. "We have various methods of contraception, and our societies have developed cultural norms and laws to manage reproduction. It's not perfect, but it works for us." Kale shook their head, scales shimmering with agitation. "This is unprecedented. The implications for your society, your evolution, it's mind-boggling." As they continued their discussion late into the night, neither Lydia nor Kale realized that this seemingly innocuous conversation about biological differences would soon spark a chain of events that would challenge both their species in ways they could never have imagined. Outside the lab, Commander Harper walked by, overhearing snippets of their conversation. He frowned, a sense of unease settling in his gut. Something told him that the differences between humans and Valarians might be more profound and potentially problematic than anyone had anticipated. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Earth continued its rotation, blissfully unaware of the interstellar drama about to unfold. The The stage was set for a clash of cultures, biology, and perhaps even civilizations. But amidst the looming challenges, there was also hope that understanding and cooperation could bridge even the vastest of differences. Little did they know, the true test of their newfound interspecies relationship was just beginning. The revelations about human fertility were merely the tip of the iceberg, and the consequences would ripple across both worlds, forever changing the course of human and Valerian history. As news of the human reproductive system spread among the Valerian delegation, reactions ranged from fascination to horror. Ambassador Zara called an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders, concern etched across their ethereal features. This biological difference poses significant challenges to our cultural exchange, Zara explained, their voice tinged with worry. On Valara, our entire society is structured around our mating cycle. The concept of constant fertility is unsettling to many of my people. President Lydia Reyes of the United Earth Council leaned forward, her brow furrowed. I understand your concerns, Ambassador, but surely we can find a way to bridge this cultural gap. Commander Harper, standing at attention near the wall, couldn't shake his unease. He caught Dr. Chen's eye across the room, noticing her discomfort as well. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that the issue went beyond mere cultural differences. The Valarians expressed concerns about human unpredictability, fearing that constant fertility might lead to aggressive expansion and overpopulation. Our two species are more different than we initially thought, Kale said, that a voice soft but firm. This revelation raises questions about compatibility, not just biologically, but philosophically. Ilara felt a pang in her chest at Kale's words. Over the past weeks, she had grown close to the Valarian scientist, finding in them a kindred spirit. Now, it seemed as if an invisible wall had sprung up between them. As tensions rose in the meeting room, President Reyes called for a recess. Ilara took the opportunity to approach Kale, determined to salvage their budding friendship and professional relationship. Kale, can we talk? She asked, leading them to a quiet corner. The Valarian scales shimmered with uncertainty, but they nodded. Of course, Dr. Chen. I know our biological differences are significant, Ilara began, choosing her words carefully. But isn't that the beauty of the universe? Diversity in all its forms. Kel's expression softened slightly. You're right, of course. It's just challenging to reconcile with everything we've known. As they continued their conversation, neither noticed Commander Harper watching them intently from across the room. His military training had taught him to be wary of potential threats, and right now, the growing closeness between human and Valarian scientists set off alarm bells in his mind. Meanwhile, in the Valarian ship orbiting Earth, heated debates were taking place. Some saw the humans' reproductive system as an abomination, a threat to the natural order. Others, like Kale, argued for understanding and cooperation. Zin, a Valarian chief of security, paced the ship's command center. We cannot ignore the potential danger, they insisted. A species with unchecked fertility could overrun the galaxy if left unchecked. Back on Earth, as the diplomatic meetings reconvened, both sides tried to find common ground. Proposals were made for cultural exchange programs, scientific collaborations, and even joint colonization efforts of uninhabited planets. Yet beneath the veneer of diplomacy, undercurrents of mistrust and fear continued to swirl. Humans, for their part, were taken aback by the Valarians' rigid social structure and what some saw as a lack of individual freedom. Late that night, as Ilara worked alone in the lab, she received an encrypted message from Kale. Meet me at the observatory. Urgent. Heart-pounding, Ilara made her way through the deserted corridors of the GSO complex. She found Kale staring up at the stars, their scales reflecting the twinkling lights above. What's wrong, Kale? Ilara asked, concern evident in her voice. The Valarian turned to her, their eyes filled with a mix of emotions Ilara couldn't quite decipher. I've been doing some independent research, Kale said, their voice barely above a whisper. There's something you need to know about our species' history with other civilizations. As Kel began to explain, Ilara's eyes widened in shock. The implications of what she was hearing could change everything, not just for Earth-Valara relations, but for the entire galaxy. Unbeknownst to them, a shadow moved in the darkness nearby. Commander Harper, acting on his suspicions, had followed Ilara to the observatory. As he listened to the hushed conversation, his hand instinctively moved to the weapon at his side. The stage was set for a revelation that would shake the foundations of both human and Valarian society. As the stars continued their eternal dance overhead, the fates of two civilizations hung in the balance, with Ilara and Kale unwittingly at the center of a cosmic drama about to unfold. Kale's revelation left Ilara reeling. "You're saying that Valarians have encountered other species with continuous fertility before," she whispered, her mind racing with the implications. Kale nodded sullenly. "Yes, but it's not common knowledge among our people. In our history, there have been 3 other civilizations with reproductive systems similar to humans. In all cases, the encounters ended poorly." As Kel explained further, Ilara's shock turned to horror. The Valarians, driven by fear of being outpaced and potentially overwhelmed, had taken drastic measures to neutralize what they perceived as threats. 2 of the civilizations had been sterilized through engineered viruses, while the 3rd had been subtly manipulated into civil war and self-destruction. "But that's genocide," Ilara exclaimed, her voice rising in anger and disbelief. "Sheh," Kale cautioned, glancing around nervously. "I know. That's why I'm telling you. A faction within our leadership is advocating for similar measures against Earth. We need to stop them." Unbeknownst to them, Commander Harper's grip tightened on his weapon as he listened from the shadows. His worst fears seemed to be confirmed, but he forced himself to remain still and gather more information. As Ilara and Kale frantically discussed ways to prevent history from repeating itself, a new complication arose, one that neither of them could have anticipated. Ilara suddenly felt dizzy, a wave of nausea washing over her. She stumbled and Kale caught her, their cool scales a sharp contrast to her feverish skin. "Ilara, are you all right?" Kale asked, concern evident in their voice. I don't know," Ilara mumbled, trying to steady herself. "I've been feeling off for a few days, but I thought it was just stress." A look of dawning realization crossed Kale's face. With trembling hands, they activated their personal scanner, running it over Ilara's body. The device beeped, and Kal's eyes widened in shock. "Ilara," they said, their voice barely above a whisper, "you're pregnant." The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment as the words sank in. Ilara shook her head in disbelief. "That's impossible. I haven't been with anyone in months, and certainly not with—" Her voice trailed off as she met Kal's gaze, understanding dawning on both of them simultaneously. Somehow, against all odds and everything they thought they knew about biology, Ilara was carrying a human-Valarian hybrid. In the shadows, Commander Harper had to stifle a gasp. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. As Ilara and Kale grappled with the implications of this impossible pregnancy, alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. Red emergency lights bathed the observatory in an eerie glow. "Attention all personnel," a voice boomed over the intercom. "This is a code red. All non-essential staff evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." Ilara and Kale exchanged panicked looks. Had their conversation been overheard? Was this the beginning of the Valarian faction's plan against Earth? As they rushed from the observatory, they nearly collided with Commander Harper, who had decided to reveal himself in light of the emergency. "Dr. Chen, we need to get you to a secure location immediately," Harper said, his voice tense. "And you," he added, pointing at Kale, "have some explaining to do." Before either could respond, a group of armed guards rounded the corner, led by Zin, the Valarian chief of security. Their weapons were trained on Ilara, Kale, and Harper. By order of the Valarian High Council, "You are all under arrest for crimes against galactic security," Zin announced, their voice cold and unyielding. As they were surrounded, Ilara felt Kel's hand slip into hers, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Despite the chaos unfolding around them, she felt a flutter in her abdomen, a reminder of the impossible life growing within her. In that moment, Ilara realized that her unborn child might be either the spark that ignited an interstellar war or the key to lasting peace between their species. The fate of two worlds now rested not just in their hands, but in the very fabric of her being. As they were led away, alarms still blaring and confusion reigning, one thing became crystal clear: the road ahead would be fraught with danger, diplomacy, and decisions that would alter the course of human and Valerian history forever. The true test of their species' ability to coexist was just beginning, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The next few hours passed in a blur of confusion and rising tensions. Ilara, Kel, and Commander Harper found themselves detained in a high-security wing of the GSA complex, surrounded by a mix of human and Valerian guards. The atmosphere was thick with suspicion and barely contained hostility. President Reyes stormed into the detention area, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Would someone please explain to me why I have the Valerian High Council threatening to withdraw from all diplomatic relations and demanding the extradition of Dr. Chen?" Commander Harper stepped forward, his jaw set. "Madam President, the situation is more complex than we initially thought. Dr. Chen is..." He hesitated, glancing at Ilara. "I'm pregnant," Ilara blurted out, her hand instinctively moving to her abdomen, "with a human-Valerian hybrid." The room fell silent, the implications of her words hanging heavy in the air. President Reyes' eyes widened in disbelief. "How is that even possible?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale, still held firmly by two guards, spoke up. "We don't know. By all accounts, it shouldn't be, but it is, and now my people see it as a threat to our very existence." As if on cue, the room's main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Zarak, the Valerian supreme leader. His scales were a dark, stony grey, a sign of extreme agitation. "President Reyes," Zarek's voice boomed, "this abomination cannot be allowed to continue. The human Lydia Chen must be turned over to us immediately for examination." The way he said examination sent chills down Ilara's spine. She knew, without a doubt, that neither she nor her unborn child would survive such a procedure. President Reyes, to her credit, stood her ground. "Supreme Leader Zarak, Dr. Chen is a citizen of Earth. We will not hand her over without due process and assurances of her safety." Zarek's eyes narrowed. "Then you leave us no choice. We cannot risk the spread of this genetic anomaly. If Dr. Chen is not surrendered to us within 24 Earth hours, we will be forced to take more drastic measures." The screen went dark, leaving the room in stunned silence. Commander Harper was the first to speak. "Madam President, we need to prepare for the possibility of an attack. The Valerian ships in orbit have enough firepower to level our major cities." President Reyes nodded grimly. "Alert all defense forces. We need to evacuate key personnel and prepare our orbital defenses." As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Ilara felt a gentle touch on her arm. She turned to see Kale, their eyes filled with a mix of worry and determination. "I won't let them harm you or the child," Kale whispered. "There has to be another way." Ilara managed a weak smile. "We need to find it fast. The fate of both our worlds depends on it." As tensions escalated, news of the impending crisis leaked to the public. Protests erupted outside the GSA complex, with some humans calling for peace and understanding, while others demanded the immediate expulsion of all Valerians from Earth. In orbit, the Valerian ships began to take up aggressive positions, their weapons systems powering up. Earth's fledgling space fleet moved to intercept, creating a tense standoff high above the planet's surface. Back in the detention area, Ilara, Kale, and Commander Harper huddled together, trying to formulate a plan. If we could just buy some time, Ilara mused, maybe we could find a way to prove that this pregnancy isn't a threat. Kale nodded enthusiastically. Yes, if we could demonstrate that human Valerian hybrids are viable and not genetically dominant, it might ease my people's fears. Commander Harper looked skeptical. And how do you propose we do that in less than 24 hours? Before either could respond, alarms blared once again. President Reyes rushed back into the room, her face pale. We've just detected multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere, she announced. They appear to be some kind of biological delivery systems. Ilara's blood ran cold. She remembered Kel's earlier revelation about the fate of other fertile species the Valarians had encountered. They're trying to sterilize us, she whispered in horror. As the gravity of the situation sank in, Ilara realized that time had run out. The next few hours would determine not just her fate, or that of her unborn child, but the future of human-Valerian relations and possibly the survival of humanity itself. With the clock ticking and tensions at a breaking point, Ilara knew they needed a miracle. Little did she know, the key to averting this crisis was growing within her, a symbol of unity in a time of division and hope in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. As panic spread across the globe, Ilara, Kale, and Commander Harper found themselves at the center of a diplomatic maelstrom. The GSO complex had become a fortress, with world leaders and top scientists converging to address the crisis. President Reyes, her face etched with worry, addressed the Emergency Council. We've managed to intercept most of the biological agents, but a few have made it through our defenses. We need a solution, and we need it now. Ilara stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. I have an idea, but it's risky. We need to broadcast the truth about my pregnancy to both our worlds. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Commander Harper frowned. Dr. Chen, with all due respect, how would that help? It might just inflame tensions further. Kale, standing beside Ilara, spoke up. Not if we frame it correctly. This child isn't a threat, it's an opportunity, a bridge between our species. As debates raged on, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading geneticist, burst into the room. I've completed the preliminary analysis of Dr. Chen's fetus, she announced, her eyes wide with excitement. The results are extraordinary. All eyes turned to Dr. Tanaka as she explained. The hybrid embryo shows perfect genetic stability. More importantly, it exhibits traits that could be beneficial to both species: enhanced regenerative abilities, improved cognitive function, and a unique combination of human adaptability and Valerian efficiency. A hush fell over the room as the implications sank in. Ilara felt a glimmer of hope. Don't you see, she said, addressing the council. This child could be the key to our coexistence, even our mutual evolution. President Reyes nodded slowly. It's a compelling argument, but will the Valarians see it that way? As if in answer, the main screen flickered to life once again, revealing Supreme Leader Zarak. His scales had taken on a lighter hue, indicating curiosity mixed with his earlier hostility. We've been monitoring your discussions, Zarak said, his voice less harsh than before. This development is unexpected. We request a full briefing on your findings. For the next several hours, in unprecedented display of interspecies cooperation, human and Valerian scientists worked together to analyze the data from Ilara's pregnancy. As more information came to light, the mood began to shift from fear to cautious optimism. Kale, working alongside Dr. Tanaka, made a startling discovery. The hybrid embryo's genetic structure could hold the key to solving Valara's declining birth rates, they announced, their voice filled with awe. This could quite literally save our species. As dawn broke over a tense Earth, President Reyes and Supreme Leader Zarak found themselves in a virtual face-to-face meeting, mediated by Ilara and Kale. Supreme Leader, Reyes began, we propose a joint research initiative. Together, we can explore the potential benefits of human-Valerian genetic compatibility under strict ethical guidelines and mutual oversight. Zix's scales shimmered with a mix of emotions. And what guarantees can you offer that this won't lead to the genetic dominance we fear? Ilara stepped forward. With respect, Supreme Leader, the child I carry is proof that our species can coexist on a genetic level. It's not about dominance, but synergy. We have a chance to grow stronger together, rather than tearing each other apart. A tense silence followed as Zircon considered her words. Finally, he spoke. Your argument has merit, Dr. Chen. We will recall our ships and cease all hostile actions on one condition. Name it, President Reyes said, relief evident in her voice. The research initiative will be conducted on neutral ground, a space station jointly constructed and staffed by both our species, Zircon declared. Dr. Chen and her child will be at the center of this research, under the protection and observation of both Earth and Valara. As negotiations continued into the day, hammering out the details of this unprecedented agreement, Ilara found a quiet moment with Kale. Are you ready for this? Kale asked, the hand gently resting on Ilara's abdomen. Our child will carry the hopes of two worlds. Ilara smiled, placing her hand over Kale's. It's a heavy burden, but also an incredible gift. We'll face it together. As news of the diplomatic breakthrough spread, celebrations erupted across Earth. The Valerian ships, once poised for attack, now hovered peacefully in orbit, a symbol of the new era dawning for both species. Yet, as Ilara and Kel watched the sun set on this historic day, they knew that the real challenges lay ahead. The journey to true understanding and coexistence had only just begun, with their unborn child at the heart of it all. 6 months had passed since the near-catastrophic conflict between Earth and Valara. The newly constructed space station Unity, orbiting at the Lagrange point between Earth and its moon, bustled with activity. Human and Valerian scientists worked side by side, their initial mistrust giving way to mutual respect and even friendship. Ilara waddled down the station's main corridor, her swollen belly a constant reminder of the miraculous life growing within her. Kel walked beside her, their scales shimmering with pride and excitement. How are you feeling today? Kel asked, helping Ilara navigate around a group of chattering researchers. Ilara smiled, rubbing her belly. Like I'm carrying the future of two species, so, no pressure. They shared a laugh, marveling at how far they'd come. The station had become a beacon of hope, a place where differences were celebrated rather than feared. As they entered the main research hub, they were greeted by Dr. Tanaka and her Valarian counterpart, Dr. Zinva. The two had become an inseparable team, their combined brilliance leading to breakthrough after breakthrough. Ah, our star subjects, Dr. Tanaka exclaimed, her eyes twinkling. Ready for today's checkup. As Ilara underwent her examination, holographic displays lit up the room, showing the intricate details of the developing hybrid fetus. Dr. Zinva's scales rippled with excitement as he pointed out various features. Remarkable, he murmured. The child's brain structure shows an unprecedented level of synaptic connectivity. And look here, the cardiovascular system incorporates the best elements of both species. Kale squeezed Ilara's hand, their eyes filled with wonder. Our child is beautiful, they whispered. The moment was interrupted by a chime from the station's communications system. Commander Harper's face appeared on the main screen, his expression serious but no longer hostile. Dr. Chen, Kale, we need you in the diplomatic suite. We have some unexpected visitors. Curiosity piqued, Ilara and Kale made their way to the station's diplomatic area. As the doors slid open, they were greeted by an astonishing sight. Alongside President Reyes and Supreme Leader Zircon stood two alien beings unlike any they had ever seen. Dr. Chen, Kale, President Reyes began, her voice filled with barely contained excitement. I'd like you to meet Ambassador Xorax of the Galactic Confederation. The taller of the two aliens stepped forward, its iridescent, tentacle-like appendages rippling in what seemed to be a gesture of greeting. When it spoke, its voice resonated directly in their minds. "Greetings, bearers of new life," Zorax's thoughts echoed. "News of your unprecedented union has reached the far corners of the galaxy. We come to offer our congratulations and our guidance." Ilara and Kale exchanged stunned glances. "Galactic Confederation," Ilara managed to ask. Supreme Leader Zarak nodded, his scales a mix of awe and sheepishness. "It seems our isolationist policies have kept us ignorant of a larger galactic community. A community that has been watching our interactions with great interest." Ambassador Xorax's companion, a smaller, crystalline being, stepped forward. Its thoughts, when projected, carried a tone of amusement. "Your species' journey towards unity is not unique, but it is inspiring. Many civilizations have faced similar challenges. Some have failed, leading to extinction. Others, like yourselves, have found a way to embrace diversity and grow stronger for it." As the implications of this revelation sank in, Ilara felt her child kick, as if sensing the momentous nature of this meeting. She placed a hand on her belly, smiling. "So, what happens now?" she asked, looking from the alien ambassadors to the leaders of Earth and Valara. President Reyes stepped forward, her eyes shining with possibility. "Now, Dr. Chen, we take our place among the stars. The Galactic Confederation has invited both Earth and Valara to join as full members. Your child," Corex added, its mental voice filled with warmth, "will be born into a universe far larger and more wondrous than either of your species ever imagined." As discussions continued late into the night, plans were made for cultural exchanges, technological sharing, and joint scientific ventures that spanned not just two worlds, but thousands. Later, as Ilara and Kale stood in the station's observation dome, watching the blue marble of Earth and the distant sparkle of Valara's star, they felt a sense of peace and purpose unlike anything they'd ever known. "You know," Ilara said, leaning into Kale's embrace, "when I first learned about Valarian reproductive cycles, I never imagined it would lead to this." Kale chuckled, their scales shimmering with joy. "Life finds a way, as your Earth scientists like to say. Our child is proof of that." As if in agreement, the baby kicked again. Ilara laughed, guiding Kale's hand to feel the movement. "I think our little one is ready for their grand debut." "And the universe is ready to welcome them," Kale replied, their voice filled with love and hope. As they stood there, two beings from different worlds, united by love and the miracle of new life, Ilara and Kale knew that they were standing at the dawn of a new era. An era of understanding, of growth, and of infinite possibilities. The stars twinkled in the vast expanse before them, no longer distant and unreachable, but full of promise and new adventures. For Ilara, Kale, their unborn child, and the billions of lives on Earth and Valara, the future had never looked brighter. As humanity and Valarians took their first steps into a larger galactic community, they did so not as separate species, but as partners united by the most powerful force in the universe, the ability to overcome differences and find common ground in the miracle of life itself. The end of this chapter was just the beginning of a cosmic story that would be told for generations to come.